Brian, can you hear me now better? All right.
Yeah, you sound fine.
Yeah, you sound a lot better now. Hi, Craig.
Hey,
Okay, so it's 7 o'clock, and I think I will get started.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, May 25th at 7 p.m. This is a meeting of the advisory committee. We have a relatively open agenda. We do have one transfer request to vote on, and then we had really set this up as an opportunity for members of the public to come and ask any questions that they might have. So why don't we deal with the transfer request first and give folks a few more minutes to arrive if they're going to. Hold on one second. All right, so hopefully you can all see that. This is a transfer request in the amount of $912.20. And it's for legal bills. So Nanachka, our Madam Accountant, is present tonight, and I believe we have about $50,000 currently in the advisory reserve fund. So this transfer request doesn't even bring us close to depleting it. So no issues there, right, Nanachka?
You're fine. Yeah, there's like 49,000 or something like that.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve this transfer request.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor, Anne,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Omid,
Hi.
Craig,
Aye.
and I'm also a yes. Okay. So since we are just talking amongst ourselves, I guess one thing that I was wondering is,
Hey, Brian, I'm a yes too.
oh, I'm sorry, Bill.
That's okay.
Thanks. You know what happened? When I was sharing the screen, I just went through the list of people that are on the side and I didn't scroll down.
That's all right. I just wanted to be official.
Thanks. So I'm wondering if any of the members of advisory hear from their neighbors and friends questions about the work that the committee does or the town's finances that might be worth just discussing as a group. Since we're not really voting on anything, we can talk quite freely.
I don't think I've ever gotten a question or, or anything from anyone. The only thing I have heard related to what we do are concerns about the school committee and visibility into the finances.
Mhm.
I second that, and I just want them to make sure they understand that we're not trying to tell them what to do and how to do their job. We just want to have a visibility over the expenditure and the ledgers of what's happening to those money that we're giving them.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think they need to be a little bit more transparent, and we can be a little bit more helpful if they are more forthcoming. It's always been a bit of a magic box.
Because they always tell, every time we ask them, they're like, well, you know, it's a tri-town. And they tell us like, oh, we don't tell Stowe what to do or things like that. We're not asking, we're not telling people what to do. We just want to see what's happening to the money. That's all.
Happening to the money and what their priorities are. I don't really ever get a sense of that.
I think one very recent positive development, I mean, as you know, I think we had that pretty good meeting with the 3 Bolton reps. And actually last night, Bolton Representative Mike Horish was elected vice chair of the committee. So I think that's a great thing for Bolton because it gives us, I mean, we already have 3 seats at the table, but I think vice chairs is a particularly helpful one to have. So that's good. You know what? I had prepared some slides to provide a little bit of context, and I actually wanted to show some of them to you all because I'd be curious to get your reaction. So hold on a second. Let me just share my screen. I'm not going to go through all of this. There's a couple key ones that I really wanted to. You've seen a lot of this stuff. Oh, okay. So can you see that?
Yes.
So this is something that I don't think most people are familiar with in town. And obviously the data here is a little old because this is from a 2018 report at WBUR. But actually, let me scroll back to give a little bit of context. So if you go back and you look at our revenue sources, you see that the state revenue here is like 1% of all of our revenue in town. And the vast majority of that 1% is actually, oh, somebody's arrived. The vast majority of that 1% is actually the unrestricted general government aid amount. And what this slide does is it shows Bolton, Lancaster, and Stowe's sort of revenue received per resident over a certain period of time.
Wow.
And you can see that Bolton was receiving, by far the lowest. And the reason it is because the formula that the state uses to dole out these state lottery funds takes into account like population and also income of the residents. And so we like this year, our carry sheet tells us that we're going to be getting about, let's just say roughly $230,000 of unrestricted general government aid. Stowe's getting about twice that. Lancaster's getting about like 3 times that. And the other thing I really think is interesting is that Harvard, which a lot of people compare us to just because they're a next door neighbor, gets a tremendous amount of this stuff because of the fact that when the formula was created, it included like, I don't know all the details, but it included the population of Devons of a military base. And that, even though like, I think they used figures from the early 1990s, and that somehow has just been carried through. And if you read this article, it talks about how like Harvard officials will vehemently oppose any efforts to change the formula because they're like making out like bandits right now. Even though if you look at our median income, like Bolton and Harvard are not that far apart. So I think that's just kind of interesting. And then the other thing that I wanted to just call out is this right here, which just gets a little bit into some of the socioeconomics in Bolton, because I think that we do have a tricky issue in town where there are some households that, because of their personal finances and maybe because of just their philosophy when it comes to government spending, they're able to absorb a relatively high tax bill. And you can see here that like, upwards of almost like 40% of our residents, sorry, this clicker thing is annoying me, are in household incomes of $200,000 or more. But then there's also a fair number of people that are, the household income is well underneath that. And so for households in that category, an increase in their property tax is really quite burdensome. And I think that, obviously all of us on this committee are sensitive to the fact that not every household in town is situated the same when it comes to that. But I'm not sure everyone in Bolton quite realizes that. So we sort of have to accommodate a very interesting spectrum. Did anybody have thoughts about those stats?
Ryan, on that lottery slide that you showed, one of those columns was like lottery revenue or something. Was that revenue generated by lottery ticket sales within Bolton? That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
It's $5 million or something.
Yeah, and it was over, I want to say, a period of 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Pretty interesting though.
Yeah.
Can you, hey, Brian, can you pull up that the lottery numbers chart?
Yep. Just 1 second. Mm. One sec. Can you see it?
Yeah. So, and I was just looking at the numbers quickly. I mean, what's interesting is that if you look at us compared to Stowe, I mean that's a substantial difference between the two. And just looking at these numbers across here, do you know why there's that big of a difference between revenue received per resident?
No, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to the median household income number
Mm-hmm.
obviously is just frozen in time. I don't know how WBUR calculated it, whether they took it over that full 5-year period. But I think as median household income changes, it like as you go up, the formula is less advantageous. So I would guess a lot of it has to do with just what our median household income was, because Stowe does not have any, is that I'm aware of, Stowe does not have sort of like the Devon's glitch that Harvard does.
Yeah, yeah, and I know it's a complicated formula, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's just, it's 50% more revenue per received per resident, although the median household income is, I mean, ours is higher, but it's not 50% higher.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if you knew what the difference was there.
It may have something to do with the locations of lottery distribution sites. I mean, there's the pile of places just off 190, which I think are still in Lancaster, maybe. I don't know.
Any other questions about this?
So this chart was from 2018 and it has not been updated, or do we have more frequent?
Yeah, well, actually, you know what I could do? I can stop sharing. I can show you something else that kind of would give more
That theoretically should vary year to year.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Let me just pull it up. All right, so. Can you see that folder?
Yep.
All right, so tell me if you can see this when I open it. Can you not see that anymore?
Nope.
No, we can't see it.
All right, then you know what, I'm gonna have to share each one individually. All right, so what I'll do is this is what's called the cherry sheet, which Ninotchka is familiar with, but basically this is just it shows the budgeted estimates of what Bolton and every other municipality will receive from the state. And because we're in a regional school district, we don't really get much Chapter 70 money directly. That Chapter 70 money goes to the school district itself. But the big number that I want you to focus on is that unrestricted general government aid. So you see like we're right in that 215, 216 range. What I'll do now is I'll stop sharing and I'll show you, I'll show you Stowe and Lancaster and Harvard. So let's start with Stowe. So Stowe, like I said, is getting about double, 462. Whoops, I don't know why that's doing that. 462, 670. Did y'all see that?
Yep.
And then Lancaster, got all this screen sharing is giving me a headache. Lancaster's getting just over 1 million. But then to me, the real egregious one is what you're about to see. Harvard's getting $1.6 million because of that crazy formula, that outdated formula that they're still able to use. Anyway, just good to know so that when people complain about, Harvard's doing X, Y, and Z, you're like, yeah, well, Harvard's also getting like 8 times as much unrestricted general government aid every year. That's like just free money for them.
Right.
Based on numbers from
Legislation or something.
So I will tell you, I've actually brought this up multiple times, like to people at the Massachusetts Municipal Association. And basically what they say is any effort to tweak the formula will obviously create some winners and some losers. And so you're always going to get the current winners just like doing everything they can to prevent the formula from being changed. So it's just, and I mean, it would also be different too. Like, I would say Bolton is not the most sympathetic plaintiff because like our median income is also quite high.
It's a wealthy town. I mean,
Right.
you're not going to get a lot of sympathy.
Yeah.
Although it would be interesting to get any kind of insight into whatever the formula is, because like Bill pointed out, if median income is the driver, we're not that far out of whack with other towns. There's
It's
probably
a-
some mix of population and median income, but
It's a lot of different variables.
yeah, I'm curious just what all the variables are and what the drivers are, because it doesn't seem like we're so vastly different from Harvard and Stowe that they'd be getting, a factor of 5 difference in aid.
Yeah, I mean, so Stowe's basically getting double what we're getting. Bolton's population is roughly 6,000. Stowe's is roughly 7,500. I don't know if they look like even within population, if they do anything else, like break it down further in terms of age group and stuff. But it seems like I agree with you. It would be good. You can't find the formula, by the way.
Oh,
Like
of course not.
you just like cannot find it anywhere.
Of course not.
I've looked too.
Yeah, it's very from what I've seen in Nanachka, like by law they have to publish it in the budget every year, but what they end up doing is they just publish the numbers. So like you can see what your each town's numbers are every year, but you don't see how they arrived at the number.
It's incredibly frustrating. It just amazes me that they can get away with that.
Yeah. But anyway, Bob, so it seems plausible to me that the difference between Stowe and Bolton really could just be by virtue of our different demographics. Obviously, the Harvard outlier is like because of basically an inequitable formula.
Yeah.
I want to see if there was anything else I wanted to
What
bring.
really amazes me about this whole thing is all this information that you come up with. Where do you get this stuff? And like,
Oh, do you want me to show you? Do you want me to show you how to actually?
how do you know to find this stuff? Like, did you just pick this up over the years and being on the advisory committee, or?
Yeah, so again, since we have time, actually, I'd love to show you all how to do some of this stuff. Hold on a second. Let me pull open.
I will also say that the DLS just very recently uploaded a whole bunch of like, videos and all sorts of, data like that Brian's going to show you. I'm sorry, I have a terrible cold.
Oh,
All right, can you all see that? So this is the municipal data bank, which is hosted by the Division of Local Services. And one of the things that I will do is like, all right, let's just do a really easy one. All right, so let's see, tax rates or, oh, average single family tax bills. This is fun. Let's look at average single family tax bills. And just click on this link. And then let's say we want to look at, give me some townspeople. Who do we want to look at? Well, obviously Bolton.
Well, let's Stowe, Harvard, I think are the three that we seem to be questioning.
Lancaster
What
too.
about Berlin?
Harvard. Yeah, let's look at Berlin.
To Lancaster to keep the tri
Yeah.
town.
All right. And then why don't we just do the 5 most recent? All right, so oh yeah, here's this column right here is the single family tax bill. So you see that in 2021, Bolton's average single family tax bill was 11,456. Harvard's data is not up. Stowe's is 10,618. Berlin's is 6,913. And Lancaster's is 7,325. So Berlin, obviously, their whole situation is affected by the, Solomon Pond Mall, the Highland Commons. They've got some major commercial developments that are right on the fringes of that town. So it doesn't really, those developments don't actually really affect like the feel of the town, but the town is able to.
past the mall.
What'd you say?
They're down, some of them are down past the mall.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Actually, there was another. So yeah, Bob, this is where I get a lot of the info is from the DLS. The only thing that I would say is that if you want, like, the table that I showed with the median income.
Yeah.
So the best site for that is actually the census website, because the median income data on the DLS website is really old. But the census website's pretty easy to use. And then, you know what? There was another slide I want to share real quick, because I ran through it kind of fast.
It's both expensive.
So what I did here, though, is basically I used a lot of the same comparators on both sides. And I took the population and then the total budget and then divided by, basically divided the total budget by the population to get a budget per capita figure. And I want to say that this was like 2019 numbers, because I had to use numbers where you could find the budget and the population, and like 20 and 21, they weren't ready yet. But anyway, you can see that like actually Bolton's budget per capita is not that out of whack. Like we're just slightly above Stowe, we're below Harvard and Berlin and Maynard and Littleton. So to me, what that, like, our budget per capita is actually not that crazy. Like we're not like a profligate town. But the reason why our average single family tax bills are so high is because like the only show in town for paying for our services is property tax, basically. Right, Nanachka?
Right. I mean, you look at most of those other towns and they all have, a lot more businesses than we do.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And I also thought it was interesting that although we're clearly toward the top when it comes to median household income, like Sudbury, Wayland, and Carlisle are also spending a lot per capita, and we're actually not, comparatively speaking.
Which sort of comes back to your histogram you showed earlier about the median income, and can we tolerate bearing the burden of the government just on everyone, the backs of the residents, which so far I think has been the case. I guess the question is, how long is that sustainable?
Right. Just seeing whether there's, let me share this too. So have you seen this before? This just gives a sense of, like, if you look at Bolton as a whole, like our total assessed value is about $1.1 billion. The vast majority of all of that assessed value is in residential property. And then less than 7% is in commercial, industrial, and personal. And in fact, I think if you look at the base map of the town, we have one clear industrial zoned set of properties sort of at the Stowe border. And then we have very limited commercial zone properties, and everything else is residential. So it really, like, when you start to ask yourself questions about how do you shift some of the tax burden away from residential, it's not only making sure that we're like welcoming business into the zones that already permit business, but also asking the really tough, like, philosophical questions about, do we want to try to attract even more, and what does that do to the quote unquote character of the town?
Isn't most of that industrial area empty anyway, not being used? Especially the one like by the Stowe, the one. So I feel like, can town come up with something like what kind of business they want to attract and actually start like going after those businesses to come over here?
I think they've tried, but Bolton is not very attractive.
I mean, like, okay, like,
Why is that, Nanachka?
I mean, there's not, from what I've heard, excuse me, just anecdotally, if you were to bring a company here or whatever, there's one place to go out to lunch. There's, it's not like you're a Marlboro where there's lots for your employees to do. And, the taxes are high. There's other options.
Brian, you're on the master plan steering committee.
Yeah.
So is that the direction the committee is trying to go with Bolton, to bring in more, improve the tax base through commercial development?
So I think well, don't shake your head yet, Nanachka. No, I think the tricky thing about a master plan is that in order for it to be something that can actually work and be implemented, it actually needs to reflect what the residents believe. So what we're trying to do this summer is get a better sense of, like, where are Bolton residents on that question? And part of it is, I think, like, we've realized that people use the same words, but they have a different visual image in their head when they use it. So for one person to talk about a business district, they might think, oh, that means you're going to, like, totally change what downtown near the town hall looks like, when in fact there may actually be other parts of Bolton that could be developed nicely into a commercial district. And there are all these, like, planning principles about how sometimes the most important thing is just, like, the design of the buildings. Like, it doesn't really matter what's happening inside them, but if they look a certain way, then the residents are kind of like, oh, great. We're happy with that.
But let's also be honest, a couple more Bolton beans is not going to change anybody's taxes. Like you would need something like the marijuana facility that was shot down at Cobham or something, you know, just a couple little businesses aren't going to change.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd need something pretty substantial.
And I don't think that.
Well, I think, Brian, you pointed out kind of meeting or a couple of our meetings that, we're sort of at the limit of what we can squeeze out of the budget. And, no one wants people complain when their taxes go up. So if the school budget continues to rise, which we don't have really much control over, then we're sort of maxed out in terms of what we can squeeze out of the general government budget.
I think we would have to go for an override if the school continued to be 4 or 5%. But, if it could stay at 3, and I don't know if that's sustainable for them either,
Well, and we've heard about large capital expenditures potentially showing up. At some point, something's going to have to give here.
And there's also going to be a new high school. And that's probably 6 years away, but it's going to be a large, override.
I thought to Bob's point, you might be interested in seeing this idea about squeezing money out of our budget. So, one of the sources of free cash, one of the elements that goes into the free cash that gets certified is, departmental turnbacks, or revenues that were in excess of what we had anticipated. And I think if you look at the stuff I'm about to show you, all right, so here we go. This shows you certified free cash as a percentage of the budget. Like, we are really running a tight ship when it comes to free cash. Like, we've sort of chosen not to generate more free cash than we need, because in order to do that, you sort of have to tax more and then things get turned back the following year. But if you compare us to Lancaster and Stowe in 2021, right? Lancaster had $1.9 million of certified free cash. Stowe had almost 2.4 million of certified free cash.
I don't understand how that is so high. I would love to look at their books.
Can we have a plan with them? Have plan with their advisory committees to see what they're doing? Have a joint meeting or something?
Well, the last 3 years, they've had almost 0 increase for schools. So that's given them a lot more capacity.
Well, is that a capability for us to have a joint advisory? You know how they have a tri-town meeting?
Yeah.
Can we do something just on the advisory side of the house? So
I think
we can get together.
I think we could. I think it probably what would even be a good first step is to come up with a set of questions that we would want everybody to answer in common. What is it that we all want to know from the other town, what they're up to. But yeah, no, I like that idea. But I have to say, Ninotchka, jump in if you disagree. I think it's good that we're not generating too much more free cash. I think we're a little.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So
you've overestimated your receipts, or you have massive turnbacks.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things that was troubling about the school presentation when she was talking about basically free cash or retained earnings is what they were using for a lot of their budget over the years. And that can only happen for so long.
I agree. That's why I'm not sure that they could even sustain a 3% budget.
Yeah, because they were using pretty big numbers from there, weren't they, Ninotchka?
I think so. It seemed like $500,000
Yeah.
maybe $1 million. I honestly can't remember.
But I mean, the reality that we're facing is that, let's say the school committee wanted to propose an override, like a general operating override, that the effect of that would be to increase everybody's property tax bill. Like, because there's no, I don't know, I'm just wondering, like, how do you even, how would you convince Bolton folks to go along with something like that?
It's gonna be a shutdown. I can tell you that no one's gonna approve it. Put it this way, I had to redo. I did like I did my reloan. I did my loan again this year because I got way less. The bank couldn't believe how much my taxes went up. That they wouldn't give it to me. They had to get they had to get two separate times, separate. They had to reach to the town to get a certified one to make sure the hike in the taxes was actually real.
I disagree. I think if it's for the school, I think it would pass.
I agree with you. I think it would pass. Judging by the last few years of town meetings, people don't care. They're just going to say yes.
I think that the argument is always that, well, if the school is successful, all of our property values go up, and in the end, it's worth it. And it's sort of like, how do you argue against that? Because really nobody's showing any numbers.
Yeah, and I think people would be much more open to commercial development if they understood the weight that the school plays in the budget. I mean, we're arguing over a $1,200 security camera, and it's 5 or 6 decimal places.
Yep. The other element in here that we haven't really even talked about is housing. Actually, I think I can probably, this was happened at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting. Nanachka, I don't know if you're aware that the Board of Selectmen voted to enter into basically the LIP with the 40B developer. And so what'll happen is, if this project goes forward, is everyone familiar with this project?
The office.
The office park one, or?
Yeah, the Bolton Office Park. I think it would be like roughly 250 units of rental housing. But actually, like, that may, I think that they said that would generate maybe another $400,000 of tax revenue.
I believe they said 700.
Oh, did they?
Yes, it might be a little bit lower because I think they removed some units.
Yeah, I thought it was 6 something.
But that's significant. But there are a lot of people who aren't a huge fan of more dense housing in Bolton either. So it's like
everybody wants something different from Bolton, and it's tough.
I think our job is just try to put as much factual information out there as possible. Like, I'm sure we all have our own personal views, but what irritates me is that I hear arguments that have no facts behind them. So I'm hoping we can try to like generate some more data and information. So that leads me to the last thing I want to talk about, since nobody else is here. I know at our last meeting, we talked about just thinking about like the structure of the committee and people taking on different roles. I think I've been serving as chair for 3 years now. I'm not sure. And although I enjoy it, I also really want to develop other people's interests and abilities. And so if there are things that you all are interested in and want to be doing, like, we should talk either now or offline or whatever, because I think there's a lot of really good stuff that we can all be doing, and I want to make sure that you have the chance to do it. Does anyone have any?
Well, I'm not hot to do it, but one of the things I do miss is that at one point we had some liaisons with the various departments that I thought was very helpful to understand what their work was, what their challenges were, what the choices they were making. And, we had sort of one-on-one discussions with them that I thought were very useful. I did some stuff with the DPW in particular, and also I think the fire department. But it gave you a little insight into, where they're struggling and what their priorities are. And that obviously underpins their budget requests.
Yep.
So I thought that was really helpful. And I think we did the first year I was on the advisory board, and we tried it the second year, and then it sort of petered out. But that kind of information I thought was really helpful. Nanachika, what did you think of it? Do you think it was helpful?
I think it was helpful, but I think it went away because, excuse me, it ended up not getting, I think, funneled correctly to advisory. It was kind of, people were off doing their own things, whereas
Yeah.
I do think it has value as long as it goes back to advisory.
Yeah, maybe we need to restructure it in that way, but it was just really, for me, it was an education on what some of these departments did, what they saw their challenges, what you needed to take with a grain of salt. But generally, it was better familiarity with what these folks are trying to accomplish.
And how did that work? Did you like meet individually with DPW or something? And
Yeah, I mean, we basically, each of us sort of took a department or two, Ted Kirchner and I did the DPW, and then I think I did was it the fire or the ambulance with somebody else, but it was just, meeting with them once every couple of months ahead of the budget cycle. What are going to be your priorities? What worries you? And you take it all with a grain of salt, because they're pitching to you. By the same token, you get a sense of, some of them can't do what they're going to do with a truck that doesn't make it to the fire. It was an interesting exercise. And then we scrapped it because, I don't know, people were getting, too much information or championing the department too much. I don't know what the thing was, Nanachika. You would have probably had a better sense of it. And not everybody did the conversations with the entities either. I thought it was useful, especially for a new member. What does the DPW really do?
So I'm sharing a document that just shows like what the assignments were during that. I think this was the last budget cycle that we had them. And so for like the bigger departments, we paired people together.
Yeah, that was right.
Yeah, so like Anne was paired with Ted for DPW, Craig and Joe Meyerson were paired for Library and Parks and Rec. So I would be completely in favor of restoring this sort of a process. The only thing that we would need to really just all be in agreement about is that like it's more of an information. Well, basically what happened was information gathering stopped being just information gathering, and like some of the liaisons would say things to the department head that suggested that like a decision had been made, and then it made the capital planning process that year get very chaotic because there was like basically 3 sets of information floating out there and nobody was on the same page. So we overcorrected by almost just like everything funneling through Dawn Low the past 2 years, which I think has been very helpful, like 99% very helpful. But the downside is that I do think we as a committee have less of a relationship and less visibility into, as Anne says, their goals and priorities. So, I mean, yeah, we could do it, and we just have to come to agreement on like protocol.
Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things where it's sort of information gathering, and it all gets put into the same stew and it comes out at the other end. And we still have to set priorities. I mean, there's no question, with a finite amount of money, you look at the most pressing needs and you need to figure out how to address those, as well as giving everybody an operating budget that keeps the services viable. it's a, you know, it's a balancing act. Natasha could probably do it in her sleep.
I don't know about that.
You know,
So
you
what do you
can,
mean?
you can tell when this, you know, it's funny when people would advocate things, you can, I mean, maybe because I did this as a living, talking to all these departments who were looking for money. And it was one of those, you would always tell when it's a little oversold. So I always found it helpful just to sort of prod a little and understand it, okay. But I don't know, it was a good orientation year for me, actually.
I like the idea, and with ground rules, we can have like Don or things send the email to all the heads of all the department, be like, hey, the advisory committee is there for informational purposes only. They don't have a power to make any decision on behalf of the committee or the thing. They're only there as advice and learning capability. So like, doesn't create what do you call it, chaos again. And they can be like, hey, you've been told that they're not there to make any decision.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just it was useful for me to understand the departments more.
Any other comments or thoughts before we call it a night?
The DPW thing just reminded me of something. One of the other things that we spent a lot of money on was vehicles. And if it has nothing to do with us, but like if the town, they were talking about like the new DPW coordinator or manager, he said he's trying to come up with a rotation of the vehicles and things like that. I feel like that's important because like, I mean, fire truck that costs $800,000. That's a ding to the budget, and those plow and things are important, but we actually have to know what's going on with them. And if we can't replace one, what's the impacts we're gonna have and things like that. Not that like, oh, your road's not gonna plow. I mean, now what's the impact's gonna be? Actual impact, like we need something.
That
instead of just
department had a
rotating-
history of being very thrifty, and I think it got too thrifty. And we began to have failing vehicles, so.
No,
think
no,
we're
not
back
being
track.
thrifty. Like, so I'm talking about like, okay, there are preventive maintenance we can do on the vehicles. If we do this preventive maintenance, it's gonna extend the life of the
Right,
vehicle
right.
X amount of years. Preventive maintenance, like if I go do this $20 oil change, is gonna like, impact my vehicle 10 years longer. That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. Not like what I can save money, but things like that that can extend the life, or be like, hey, by me just doing this repair at this age for this vehicle, we might be able to push it, but I really need the money on another vehicle because that
Yeah.
cannot be life. Now that's
Yeah, no.
separate from being thrifty. This is like the life expectancy.
Yeah,
Thrifty means that like I don't want to spend the money. Life expectancy is like, what can I do to extend the life of it, or at what level of the life I can say goodbye to it and there's no more pushing it.
yeah, no, I
That's
agree.
where I'm going with it. That's he kind of like said, I really want to see if the town can do that, because if it does, then it helps both our police, fire, and DPW. So we're not like, making a decision on what we don't want to fix. We can make a decision, better decision, and provide data to people in the town. This is why we're making this decision.
Yeah. Well, I think we've gotten better at it, but for the longest time, we just used stuff over and over and over again and put it together with bubble gum and string.
So yeah, that's being thrifty. That's not being life cycle.
Yeah, no, I was pleased to see the town willing to invest in upgrading some of the stuff this last town meeting.
Anything else?
Ryan, can I make an observation here, I suppose? As we went through this process, we talked to each individual department and we more or less cut them down to a bare minimum. In some cases, we were squeezing a couple $100. One that comes to mind is the library said, well, if I cut eliminate all of our programs this year, we'll save $1,000. And we said, yeah, we should probably do that to keep you level funded. There were others, I don't recall all the details. But then at the end of the process, we said, hey, we're actually in pretty good shape. In fact, we're in such good shape that I think we can buy this DPW truck and pay for it in 2 years. But it didn't seem like there was a mechanism to go back to the departments and say, actually, maybe we could pay for that truck over 3 years and you can have your $1,000 back or your couple $100 back. And certainly the departments could have asked for a capital expense, but these aren't in the capital expense category. It's like the small expenditures that might have made a huge difference to the departments in some cases. I didn't notice any kind of mechanism to go back and restore that.
I think that's a really good observation. And it's like, I think there's a lot of promise in the idea. My hesitation would be that we might have to establish some sort of parameters around like the threshold for the amount that we could go back. You know what I'm saying? Because we couldn't just go back to every department and revisit their wish list because some wishes are very expensive. But I agree with you, like if it's, and the other thing too is this was a bit of an unusual situation because part of the reason why we ended up at the very end with a little bit more wiggle room was because all those contracts got settled much sooner than we had thought.
Right.
So in some ways, the process
typically doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, like, why don't we have a process? And it's like probably because this very rarely happens.
Well, and
But
I
no,
would
I
also
hear-
say the school, we don't get the school until March 15th. We basically have a week to finish.
But I still think I think it's a good point. Like, I think especially for the library, we probably could have had time to say, hey, you know what, let's build that back in.
I wonder if it's something you could get at in advance when they submit their budget request. It's sort of here's the needs, but then everyone can have X% of their budget as, okay, if there's money available, this is where I would like to apply the next couple $100. And then we could just sort of see if we can, at the end of the process, could we do it or not?
I like that idea.
Of course, I mean, I don't know how we are fair. Like, do we have to fund everyone's desires or who gets to pick and choose? But
I was just going to say, that's the rub. How do you say yes to the library and no to DPW, or yes to you, but no to you? I'm not sure it's fair.
I don't have a good answer.
Well, if you're doing it based off some formula, I would say to do it % of the discretionary budget. So it strips out the salaries and step ups.
Well, I also think that there were years when you ended up investing in one department more than another just because of the priorities or the need at that particular time. Everything goes around eventually. We did more for the DPW this year than we had done since I could remember. And no one seemed to complain, which was surprising, but the department needed an upgrade. There was no question about it. When we did the library, having been there at the conception, it was a long slog to basically say that we had a certain level of education, we had a certain level of culture, and the library where you had to shoo people out of the bathroom in order to get your supplies was not acceptable. So they got they got a huge amount of money and have become wildly successful. But it goes around. But I think there are times when you meet with these departments, you realize there's something niggling or something that's really looming that we need to address. And by doing that, we may not be able to address somebody else that year, but it goes around. I don't know, Natasha, you've been using it for years. You always have a baseline, but everybody gets something at least once every so often. So
It's different every year. Yeah. I mean, depends on what our capital.
Yeah.
The school is essentially a huge driver on what we're able to do.
Yeah,
Is it too much to ask them if they give us a wish list to say what kind of impact it will have on the town? So
Yeah,
that can be
I
like
think
a,
I think they come in and they present the wish list just like they present the rest of the budget. I mean, which would mean that they present what type of impact it would have based off their programs and services.
and that way, like, you know, it's not like we're taking, if we pick one to fund, we can be like, hey, this is the reason why we picked it. You have the, you know, most bang for our buck through this program.
well, I don't know, it's never going to be perfect, but I think
I
there,
understand. Well, I mean, we can try
we
to
need
make
to
it as
listen
fair as possible.
on some of those and take a few risks occasionally.
And there's a very good chance that we have no money to give back, so.
Right.
Could be a moot point.
I'm also, I'm hopeful that this coming year we'll have a sense earlier on of what the school assessment is looking like, because I think if you remember, when we had the session with the reps, I sort of showed like we have our automatic 2.5% levy increase, and that entire amount can get eaten up by an assessment.
Yeah,
So then it's like in a year when that's on the table, we don't, not only do we not have money for wish list items in the town, we don't even have enough money for like level services.
Yeah.
And I will say for the town, I mean, for the school, one thing, I mean, until it's put together in that sheet that Pat gives us or gives to the school committee, I don't know when they see what each town gets assessed, but when Stowe is 0 and another town is 5%, like they have to alter, and it happens late in the process.
yeah.
I want to tell you guys something kind of funny. So as things started to open back up, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to have like a little get together with the advisory committee, like a social thing?
Can't
And so
meet.
Well, so I actually I emailed the Division of Open Government at the AG's office with this hypothetical to find out whether we would be running afoul of the open meeting law. And they were like, as long as you like do not talk about any town business, you could do it. So just something to think about, but we'd have to be pretty disciplined to not talk about anything related to the town. So anyway, well,
The town businesses, we can talk about the town, it's not businesses. Right?
that's true.
So we can
Yeah,
complain.
we can parse that, I think.
Right. Well, thank you all for your time. If there's nothing else, I guess somebody can make a motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, do we need to approve the minutes that Bill sent out some minutes?
Great, yes. They look great to me.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
Okay. All right, so then who wants to make a motion to adjourn?
I would say real quick that having co-secretaries for minutes, I think is a good thing, because
I
some
think
of
that's
those
been
minutes,
grand.
some of those minutes can get, this last one was not, but some of them can get quite tedious.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it worked well this year.
And thank you, Madam
Well, thank you for
Madam
the
Accountant, for joining
secretaries
us.
for keeping track of it. It's great.
Thanks,
Did a good
Brian.
job.
Thank you for holding this. I've enjoyed listening. I've been multitasking. And I saw that at the beginning, I did get a message that this was being recorded, and it gave me the option to stay or leave. And it makes me wonder how many people thought, oh, it's going to be recorded so I can listen to it later. It was the first time I've been into a Zoom meeting where it literally prompted me that I had the option to go.
That's funny.
Yeah, I was a little confused. I thought, well, that's great if I just wanted everyone to, if you want people to just watch the recording, but if the entire point of the meeting is to get questions brought in and you're kind of veering people off to watch the recording later. I don't know if there's an option. There was something that just, it was a prompt that popped up for me. And I don't know if other people got it, but it just makes me wonder how many people thought they could watch the recording later.
Huh.
And I think it's handy when it's a webinar, a presentation. Like if if this had been set up as a presentation with questions at the very end, but because the format of this was questions, obviously, like that was the format, I'm afraid that prompt might have diverted people. I don't know if it did or not. If people would have thought, well, I'll watch the recording later. But I thought about it because I was cooking dinner for the kids, but I wanted to listen live. So anyway, it's just a thought, and I don't know if there's a something in the meeting in the Zoom format that can be clicked on or off, but you might want to take that prompt off. For another
Yeah.
one.
Just
Yeah.
for the record, this was the first meeting I've been at that did that as well.
Huh. I have no idea why.
It's a new security rollout by Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah. Like I said, it's maybe handy if it's a webinar. It's not so handy for this format. So I'm curious if Zoom, well, either way, it's something for a later discussion.
yeah. No, thanks for letting us know.
But either way, it was informative. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
And I am glad it's recorded. So we can discuss later, but I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So have a good evening.
All right, so was there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second that.
All right, all in favor?
I'm going to leave. Bye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kristen.